So speaking of the bleach that you're not supposed to drink, the anime.
Sometimes there's swords involved. So we did the first video. It was part 1 of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. Now we're on to core 2. Apparently we're cores in anime. I don't really get it, but that's what we're doing.
So you kept writing that to me, and I was like, "The fuck is he smoking?"
That's what they're called. When it
A 3-month unit of television broadcasting. Huh.
Okay, didn't know that. All I knew was that when it's within the same season, unless you're Attack on Titan, we're not talking about that because it's trash.
Oh, we'll get back to that.
The naming scheme. Bugger that. Usually, for some reason, if it's an anime and it's in more than one part of the same season, it's a core 1, 2, 3, whatever the case may be. I don't quite get why. Never looked it up. You just did.
Yeah.
So there we go.
I'm here with the
Has
facts.
Usually correcting me.
So let's talk about the first part of it, because the first thing I noticed was, is it a new intro? I'm pretty sure that's a new intro for this.
Very much so.
It seems
I've been trying to rack my brains.
It seems very un-anime, to be honest, but it fits the song very well.
Yes, it fits the song, and I've been racking my brains, and I thought you might actually know, but you don't, so maybe I should Google it before I start this, but I thought you might know. It all seems like a reference to something, and I don't know what it is, and it's been driving me insane. I know, so Bleach has a history of the intros and outros just being the Bleach characters in the normal world doing normal stuff. Bleach does love dressing its characters up in quite fashionable clothes in normal settings and just showing you. It is one of the few animes I know in the first 3 seasons, they kind of dropped it eventually. They had a big deal about showing main characters in different clothes because a lot of anime doesn't do that.
I did not
They
notice
did that
at all.
first. Yeah, you'll see, like, initially if you go back and watch, Ichigo in particular is in like quite a lot of, like, there's one moment where he's got big headphones in and he's at a thing, he's got a scarf and very different clothing. They're quite stylish when they're not in the Soul Reaper garb. Shihatsu. It's a thing, but I don't know what the intro is a reference to, but it all feels like it. I know there's some obvious ones in there, like Ichigo with the dual guitar is obviously the swords, and then I think is it a violin that Uryu's holding? It's like
I don't know, I'm just skipping to that bit now.
It all looks like a reference to me, to something, and I can't pick it, but I might be paranoid after Chainsaw Man's constant references to, like, I think they got like 12 different movies in the first intro.
I don't feel like it's any kind of reference. Just watching it now, like, it feels kind of artsy, and it's got an almost like 70s sort of neo-noir vibe to it, but maybe like there's some homage to like Cowboy Bebop type stuff, or, you know, something along those lines, but I don't think it's like a direct nod to anything.
I figured if anyone knew, it would be you, but I never Googled it, so.
Yeah, I ain't Googling it.
Yeah, there's some
either.
obvious ones in there towards the end there with the dual guitar and the dual necked guitar, and I think it's a violin.
Yeah, I didn't watch that far, but quite
yeah.
likely.
It's meant to be. He's the more so you got
classy.
the loud.
Yeah.
So yeah, versus the class. Yeah. Quite like the intro though.
Yeah, it's
the
good.
Song works. The whole lot. It's the only thing I'll say is it feels a little. See, I still feel like the helicopter picking him up on the roof is a reference to something, and I can't pick it. It's doing my head in. But the whole thing. I'll say I love all of watching that intro, and I still don't think it matches the tone of the show.
I completely agree. That's kind of what I was getting at. It's like, what is it, Spy Family? Like, you watch that intro, and even though the tone of the intro does not match the content of the episode, it feels at least characteristic to like Anya, is it? And like
Yeah.
her what she perceives of her family. Whereas this sort of, it seems in theme with itself, and it has the characters, but it doesn't feel cohesive with the show at all. And that's not to its detriment at all. Like, who gives a shit? It's an intro.
No, it's a great watching intro, but it didn't feel in line with what we then watch.
No.
Which is a bloodbath for the most part.
Yeah, and like going on from the intro, the next part that's I noticed is the episode seemed really short. Like, really short. Because you have the recap, the intro bit, the actual like intro cinematic thing, and then the meat of the episode, and after that's done, you've got like 12 minutes of actual show, and then you've got your outro as well. And it's like, wow.
I agree, and I disliked it because it was reminiscent of early Bleach stuff. Not early Bleach, like mid Bleach, I guess I'm gonna say. Like
Waco Mundo.
That's what it. Yeah, it felt like that because there were some episodes in Waco Mundo that I think had 6 minutes of new content.
Yeah,
and this wasn't that bad, but there were moments where I was like, "What's going on, guys?" Like, I feel like we got recapped, we got some stuff, and then it was over.
I feel like this might have something to do with one of my other gripes, and I should probably get those out of the way early on. But where was my actual notes on it? Fuck, I wrote a lot of notes about this.
Oof.
Oh yeah,
because you liked the first season, so I'm curious if you got a lot of notes. Like,
most of it's just minor critiques and things like that. But
yep.
It's like, it almost feels like we're getting the Attack on Titan treatment, right? Like, we're getting part 1 of the 1,000-Year Blood War, and then we're getting part 2, and then part 2 wasn't even the end, and it just feels like it's dragging its heels. But if we're only getting like 10 minutes of actual episode, that makes me feel like a lot of this is more like, well, we just want to make sure that we get our episode quota out. So we're just we'll make sure these recaps are really long, the outro really long, and blah, 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 and push it out the door. And that feels kind of frustrating because the actual content of the show is quite enjoyable. But it just feels like there isn't a whole lot in there. If anyone watching has actually done the math, how much meat is actually in this second part? Because I need to know.
So you bring up a good point in an interesting way. So I actually felt the pacing wasn't bad because I didn't feel the pacing was bad because I felt like it was pretty much exactly what the the manga did, which I hate to be the manga reader, but it makes sense here. It feels like it did the same thing. Each episode is like we'll resolve, we'll build, we'll give you nothing. And it does that very quickly in a very concise amount of time. I'm not quite sure. It doesn't feel quite like Attack on Titan. So Attack on Titan, to me, I didn't like that at times it felt like they were cutting it off for no reason, and it turns out the studio is overwhelmed. From what I know, it turns out I think the studio doing Bleach right now is not in the same position as those guys. They're probably still overworked because that's the industry, unfortunately, but not to the same degree as those guys who are they've literally been tweeting that they're suffering, which is not good. I don't think this is that. I think this is, if I had to guess, so we've watched it all and we're talking about this in parts at the moment, the way we're structuring this chat. I think this is, all right, we've got from where the last one finished, let's pick a logical place to end this one. and then I think they had trouble making it fit in enough episodes to make that work. Does that sort of make sense?
Yes.
Like, I think they picked an end point and then said, let's get to there, and realized that if they did it in how many episodes? Is it another 12 again?
Yeah, I think it was 12. I think it's 24 in that.
I think they realized after 1 or 2 that if they actually did it in 12 full-length things, they would overshoot where they had decided to end. That's my guess. Because it does feel like that. You're not wrong. It feels like each episode has very little new information, substance, and content.
Yeah, and like, I can sort of understand the rationale, but in saying that, why not just give us the actual substance and split it up differently? Like, I don't know, like, it feels like you're being drip fed, kind of like,
Yep.
fuck, what was it? Game of Thrones towards the end, where they just kept dragging on Khaleesi's return to Westeros. It was like, she's on her way. No, she's not there yet.
Yeah, it didn't take her that long to go this. Well, it took her a while to go this far along, and then she was only this far away, and they were like,
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, what?
It really feels like a weird kind of like prick tease type thing.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I would have liked to have seen more content per episode.
Yeah.
But what was there was quite good.
Yeah.
The only other like thing that, well, there's lots of things that sort of niggle at me, but one thing that I did find a bit weird is the Quincy's constantly referencing prophecies. Prophecy this, the future that. Okay, guys, we get it. You've read a book. Just chill, bro.
I have a theory. And unfortunately, it means me talking bad about it. So initially I supported... Oh, okay, so I supported at least Ichigo's change that we see in this season that was revealed at the end of last season. I can do spoilers in this because it's been out for a while, but initially I supported that, being like, look, it was kind of teased along throughout the series. And you had said that, yeah, it's fair. It doesn't feel totally shoehorned in there, but it does feel a little bit forced in bits where it's a bit of an ass pull. And that's totally fair enough. We can sit on the fence with that one a little bit and be like, yeah, a little, but not crazy, but yeah, a little. With the Quincy's, I feel like it's total ass pull constantly.
Yeah.
I feel like the reason they're constantly referencing prophecy is being like, see, it was planned forever. I'm like, it wasn't. Like, Uryu was convinced he was the last one, and now there's fucking heaps of views. He was like, oh, arrows, that's our thing. And you're all like, oh yeah, but then old maid who started us gave us other things. So I have fire, and I have this, and I have that. And I was like, what?
Yeah, but if you try and question it,
very...
like, what's his face was like, I don't know, but I was around like way back when. So it's not like the Quincy's were actually wiped out. And that's sort of their tie back, is that they never fully went. No, that it does seem like a bit of a cop out. But I think it.
Yeah.
Talking
so
semantics about the finer points of the story of a shonen kind of seems like us just having a bit of a wank.
Yes and no. So I do like this to a degree. So I love the hype of shonen. I love the visual effects. I love the...
We know.
I'm a bit of a child in loving the yelling of it all. But
Staring
I still
at
like good
men.
writing. But I still like good writing, and I want to critique them hopefully in a constructive way that helps support better writing. Like, I have no problem with that. I don't think it's a bad thing to say that I love the powers, I love the showing of all of it. I still love some of the way the Quincy's come up with plausible weaknesses that are difficult for the Soul Reapers to overcome. I just don't necessarily love the way it feels like they were shoved in there as new enemies for the sake of variety.
Yeah,
That's often
I do appreciate the
feels
variety though, because like the first 85 seasons is like, so here's a hollow. Yeah, this is a hollow but bigger. And this one,
sort of
even bigger hollow.
That's where it was hollow, larger hollow, or this massive hollow, which later on you find out is just the smallest of the big ones. And then it was like, all right, forget hollows for a second. Your actual enemies are the guys who kill hollows, who you are actually a part of.
Yeah, the Orang.
And then, you made friends with all of them by killing them. And now you're just like their best mate. And then let's go back to the bigger hollows and go to the House of the Hollows.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Like, there was like realistically 3 enemies, and they're like, we're just gonna make them bigger for a while.
Yeah.
But like, it wasn't bad. Like how they like did all of that was okay. I just feel like the Quincy's kind of got shoehorned in a little bit.
I agree. I'm going to take a point because I've sort of got a bunch of yours and I can see you've got a very good writing. So I'm going to take one real quick.
Go.
What I feel like happened in this season a lot as opposed to last season is it was a time to shine for characters who haven't necessarily had it for a little while. And the only reason each episode meant anything to you is if you cared about that particular side character.
I agree. It was like seeing like Tien and Yamcha and shit fighting in DBZ. Like in later parts of DBZ after they'd sort of been phased out as nobodies. When you see them like later on and you're like, it's them again. And it sort of felt a bit like that when it was like the court guard squads fighting off against the Quincy invasion.
100%. I don't care that much about Renji, for example, learning the real name of his Bankai.
Yeah, that was like...
kind of cared about the Visored Captain's Bankai, being able to see that reveal.
I
didn't care that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've forgotten it. It wasn't that big a deal. It was there for 2 seconds. I've forgotten his name now. I don't know why.
There was some cool stuff in that.
Shinji.
Oh, yeah.
Shinji's Bankai, didn't care. Only bit I cared about it all, and I actually feel like this is the first time they've kind of let me down, but there is more time later. Zaraki.
Yeah. That
good in the reveals, but I already knew them all. I was just ready to see it animated. And I feel like it was skipped over somewhat.
Honestly, Zaraki, like I don't even think I have notes on anything regarding him except that his fight was okay. Yeah, I think that's literally about it.
Pretty much.
But interestingly, my point that I was going to come to sort of touches on where you're coming from. And that was that Kuratsuchi is still cool as piss. That guy is a dead set legend. He is like the reason. Like
I knew you'd like him.
All they need is just a spin-off show.
He continues to be really cool.
Yeah,
he continues to be really cool throughout this arc.
He's just so weird and creepy. So the moment he became a good or anti-bad guy,
I love that Bleach has just ignored all the times, like his OG fight with Uryu, where he talks about brutally torturing and tormenting many Quincy's, including his grandfather, into death.
Yeah.
We just forget that. Don't worry about that. Like... He's still creepy and edgy.
Yeah.
But don't worry. He didn't just like torture a bunch of innocents. We're not going to talk about that.
But
anymore.
they sort of like the way they made him out. I had this image of like Joseph Mengele, like if you're familiar with who that is. Like he's just a terrible person who only thinks about science above everything else. And like they just sort of, everyone's just like, oh yeah, no, that's just Kuratsuchi, man. Like, whatever. He's cool.
Don't worry about him. He wears weird clothes and makeup. Like, he's kooky. Leave him
Yeah,
over
like
there.
he wears his
It's
Lady
like,
Gaga
nah,
outfit later on, where it's just shiny as shit.
It's so shiny. I love that his solution. He was like, I don't like their shadow powers. Light.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? No one else thought of it. That's fine.
Yeah. I am a lamp now.
Yeah. Nah, he was cool. He was one of the cool side characters, but yeah, Zaraki's I feel like got skipped. I did like, it was this core that had the fight with him and Unohana though, right?
No, that was the first one. We already discussed that in the
Okay.
first one.
Well, anyway, this is the results of that. Sorry, the results of that. Him getting the name of his sword, all that stuff, and we get to see his first fight. It was just a Zaraki fight. It wasn't quite as cool as I wanted it to be.
But it didn't even feel like it was that. Like, I feel like Zaraki's previous fights have always been more intense because he always has that approach of the, like the Goku fights where he had weights on himself. And, you know, like halfway through the fight, he's like, oh yeah, no, I forgot to take my training weights off. And then he starts flogging the crap. That's how the Zaraki fights usually work. And I really like that. And I didn't get that same like hype during this.
No, I agree. The enemy they put him against, I don't know. I think this might be a manga versus anime thing. It was more entertaining in the manga to watch because you had this intellectual, creative-based enemy versus just pure brute, I'm gonna hit you.
Yeah.
And somehow you didn't know what the next panel would be, whereas watching it animated, I think, was actually slightly less hype.
Yeah. I can't say for the manga, but
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to properly iterate, but I was less excited watching him as I wanted to be. Whereas a lot of other side characters got a lot of showing, and I was still just like, like, I really was just waiting for Ichigo to show up, and I kind of didn't like that because the show has a massive cast, and some of them are very cool.
yeah, well, another one worth noting, I'm forgetting names because I haven't written it down at all.
That's fair. You can describe.
What's his face's brother, Byakuya? His, like, new Bankai thing, like, he did some new ability, and it was just, it looked just like the old one, but he's like, ooh, but it's different this time. And I was just like, I always love when he brings out any of his abilities.
Byakuya with the cherry blossom guy, he's they're all tiny blades, and he just makes something that looks so beautiful just into something totally brutal every time. Like, I mean, the basis of it is that it just is like billions of cuts all over your body that will slowly kill you. And even the way he fought in, to go back a little, in the Fullbring arc, when he fought the guy who's like, I know everything about your sword, so I'll just step in your safe zone where it can't hurt you. And he's like, yeah, good plan, except I grabbed a bunch of them, and then just throws them through his chest. It was like, holy shit. Like, he's just such a badass. He's like cool and calculated. He's kind of like if Sephiroth was a good guy.
Yeah. And he actually does kind of, like, even, like, his blade kind of reminds me of Sephiroth. Like, I could picture Sephiroth just holding his blade and just letting go and watching it sink into the ground and that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. But I felt like he almost felt as useless as, like, some of the court guard squad lieutenants and that. It was just kind of like...
Yep.
But he was, like... king shit previously, and now he's just like just a guy, and it's like
yeah. So it was a weird arc for that, where they're like, we're gonna give characters time to shine who didn't get the chance. Rukia absolutely kicked ass. It was cool to see her develop her thing. There was a couple other characters who really brought it in a way we hadn't seen, and some that like was kind of anticlimactic because it was like we knew you had this ability before and just didn't see it for some reason. Kenji, he's a visored. His sword for some reason is a little dagger, and that's all we had seen previously. Whereas now we get to see his Bankai, which is this big thing that appears behind him and it's fisticuffs, and he still just gets his ass kicked.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, how come you never used that before, by the way, with that big fight with Aizen and his, like, top elite Ronka? Don't worry about it. We were focusing on Hollow Mask back then.
Yeah.
And now we've revealed it, but also still gets its ass kicked. So don't worry. Like, I don't know. There was quite a few side characters I was like, cool, your time to shine. But it just happened so quick and crappy. And then somewhere it was like, your time to shine. But if you didn't care about that character, you didn't care about that episode.
Yeah. One of the big, like, I feel like it was like a really cool idea in theory, but the whole fight with the dog captain, I can't remember his name, the one that looked...
Kumamura?
Yeah, possibly.
Kumamura?
I don't know.
Something like that, yeah.
The Jinka technique is what they called it. That heart scene was fucking cool, and it totally reminded me of Bloodborne because the, like, guy that he's giving the heart to looks so much like Vicar Amelia, which our lovely editor will put on screen. And it was a really cool scene, and then he's got his giant kaiju, and then it goes a little bit, fucks a few things up, and then it's dead and it's all over. Cool.
Yeah, weird too, because I remember that in the manga, and I previously did not care about that character at all until this arc. Because you kind of get a little bit about him in previous arcs, right? Like, it's like, yeah, he's the blind guy's friend. He's sad he betrayed them. There's a little bit there when they have the confrontation with Aizen later. I was like, oh, yeah, you're ugly too. Whatever. Oh, he sees you for the first time, is mean to you. Blah, blah, blah. Didn't care that much. Thought his Bankai was pretty fucking cool. And even its Shikai, where it's just the arm, was still pretty cool. But that's about all I thought about him. When I read this arc, I was like, I care so much more about you. And then when I watched it animated, I was like, I don't know if they skipped through it quickly or it just wasn't as good. Weirdly enough, I hate manga pacing, especially Bleach, because it's once a month. But I think that kind of worked to its advantage with that character, where I read a bit and was like, I can't wait for next month. Whereas this was like, wait 10 minutes and then, oh, it's all over. I was like, oh.
Yep.
Shit.
Yeah, it was...
That was so cool. Like,
it was really
so
cool, and then
like,
it ended so anticlimactically. And
he's just a dog.
Yeah, and then like
you're like,
at the end of it, it's just like, so he did all of that, and what did he do? He saved like 3 people. That's it.
Yeah.
He did not stop anything, and he basically gave up everything.
Yeah, I think there was some weirdness with this arc where Kubo, he wanted to have real stakes and show that there was real stakes. And it wasn't just like, so the first arc we lost Yamamoto, or the first part I should say.
Yeah.
And a bunch of little side dudes, heaps of Soul Reapers died, like non-specific seated court guard squad members. Whereas this time he's like, no, I want to show that even my big characters can have bad stuff happen. But it just happens in a weird way constantly.
Yeah.
A way that feels almost safe. I don't want to do spoilers, and I won't, because... Okay, some people do die, all that sort of stuff, and I'm not going to say who does and who doesn't. That's how I'm going to do no spoilers. But it often feels like at the end of somebody's fight or arc or whatever, personal arc, not the story arc, they've been left in a spot that can let the character, the writer decide later on, after a time skip or whatever, oh, they're still alive.
Yeah.
Or they recovered from that. It feels like every character's ending or fight or knockout leads to that. And as you're watching it, you're like, are they dead? Are they really dead? Or are they just going to be back in 2 episodes? Like, it feels safe, portrayed as dangerous. I don't know how to.
Yeah, and
Is that-
I think part of it as well is that like a lot of it doesn't feel shocking because like anytime a character actually does die or their story ends, if you will, they're like, hold up, we're gonna give you some backstory, some warning, some flashing history here and there, so you're ready to accept that a character that you may love is about to depart from the show here. And it really...
But maybe not.
Yeah, but we might bring him back later if people get angry enough. Whatever. And it does feel a bit like that. I also found... it was really interesting, the whole like weird rock, paper, scissors dynamic that they had. The whole... What was it? Quincy's are weak to Hollows, Hollows weak to Soul Reapers, and Soul Reapers are weak to Quincy's. The way that works in like a rock, paper, scissors dynamic, I actually thought that was an interesting approach because like the way everything had been going so far, it was under the impression that Quincy's were just the next big bad thing. And that is a big trope that we see within shonen that is very problematic, that there's always a constant one-upsmanship.
It's the Dragon Ball big one, right? Like they're constantly like this person can wipe out a city, this person can wipe out a planet, this person can wipe out a universe, this person can wipe out a dimension. We are literally at something called the Omni King now in Dragon Ball Super, who can blink out entire universes by literally clapping his fingers.
Yeah.
It becomes a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas using a dynamic where your protagonists are going to be weak to the antagonists, but you're like anti-heroes or alternative antagonists or like side antagonists are like the weakness for the antagonists. It really adds like an interesting dynamic because it's not just constant one-upsmanship, which is a problem that they constantly have in shonen and throughout this show up until pretty much now.
Yeah, so right near the end there, you get the Oronkars come in a little bit, and you're like, why? And it's Kurasushi, of course, who's like, because they're weak to them.
Yeah, which is why there was such a struggle with Ichigo when he was learning how to be like that. And
yeah,
that was a thing that made me think that maybe there was a lot more, or like there's more planning than we gave credit at the start of this discussion.
Yeah.
That there had to have been a bit of thought about that, or at least, the writer must have been like, you know what? That makes sense. Like looking back at it and being like, oh, I could write this in. Really cool, really smart. I like that idea.
Yeah, no, the rock, paper, scissors thing is quite good. It works really well. Since we've come to him, Ichigo in this season, because obviously it's teased like all crazy. I have one minor gripe, and I'm sure they're going to do kickbacks to it. There was a weird moment, not weird, it wasn't in the manga, where he's walking without a shirt on, and it's like his training that he has to like walk to the end of the thing. Wasn't in the manga. So I was really excited to see it. Didn't see it. You just saw him take a couple steps and sweat a bunch. And it was gone. I was like, no! I wanted to see. Because obviously I've seen the end results of how he shows up and everything that happens. So I was kind of keen because you didn't see any training in the manga. Like, weirdly enough, they didn't have kickbacks to it, which is a big thing they usually do in shonen and Bleach in particular, is mid-fight, let's do a flashback to the training that got here.
Yep.
They didn't do it with Ichigo. You don't see how he's developed all these new powers, except that he's brought his powers into balance by knowing himself more. You have a couple small references, but not much. I do like, and this continues on in the next one, so I won't get into it, but I do like that his new powers as such are extensions of what he had with the inclusion of what he now knows.
Okay.
It's not a giant leap. It's not like he's Goku'd up with a new form with 50 new abilities. He's just taken what he had and has made it better.
Yeah. No, that's fair. There was one thing that also kind of bothered me, but I think it might more be me just bitching about shonen more than anything. But the fact that it still has the same fight structure that it's had from season 1. It's, oh look, I've been training since you previously beat me, and now I'm way better. And then the other guy's like, yeah, well, I was holding back. And then he's like, yeah, well, I'm taking my bunkai back. And then the other guy's like, yeah, well, your bunkai was holding me back. And it just,
it's very, you're right. That structure is present throughout all the fights, pretty much. That doesn't, even Ichigo against the 5 chicks. So they're like problematic for everybody. He rocks up, and it's very much like when he first learned bunkai. We didn't know he had learned that yet. Rocks up to save Rukia. He's struggled this whole time. The whole invade the Soul Society arc. He's fought seat, lieutenant, captain. Takes on 3 lieutenants, one-shots all of them.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is a sick moment. But you see it repeated through Bleach again and 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 again. And you see it here again. He shows up, there's the 5 Quincy chicks with different abilities, blah, blah, blah. Belts them all to hell. Gets the one who's just like, well, I'm going to beat you. And he's like, all right, fine, I'll unleash this ability, barely trying. And then they're going to stand in the way. He's like, can you move? That's going to kill you. Like, it's weird. Like, it's good. Like, you have to show growth somehow, but it's repeat. You know,
and
like, he's just taken previous stuff and gone, bam, here again.
I almost appreciate that, though, because he is one of the few that you have those instances with. With everyone else, it's constantly like it's just a back and forth throughout the entire fight. Whereas it's like maybe every couple of story arcs, once he learns something new, he'll show off that he's a total badass. And that's like...
Rukia was like that. Because her thing was badass as hell, but she's fighting the guy, he's like, I have fear. She's like, yeah? Well, you can't feel fear if you're almost dead. And he's like, what? And she freezes herself to death.
Yeah, that...
But she's like, I can still move because that's my thing. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm okay with being frozen to death. It gets over his trauma, and then Byakuya has to show up. Like, it's... that was exactly what you're saying. That to and thro back and forward was sometimes exhausting.
It is. And
you're like, oh, sick. Oh, no. Oh, sick. Oh, no.
Yeah, and like... I can totally see why, like, shows like JoJo's makes fun of that dynamic all the time. Because it's just so prevalent, and it's not necessarily a Bleach thing, but it is something that gets tiring, because, like, going by, like, Plex, where I watch it, I'm on season 17. Like, that is a lot of seasons of a show. And it's still following the same formula without really spicing it up all that much. Gets a bit tiring, but that's pretty much everything as far as my negative comments. So...
Cool. Do you want to throw out some happy vibes?
Yes. Then? The Quincy with the minigun was fucking legendary. What a dead set badass. Love that guy.
Cool.
I was a little disappointed that Baz B was not voice-overed by an Australian, just because that name, like, how you going on, Baz B?
That's fair. I hadn't even thought about that, but that works really well.
Yeah, 100%. It would have just been dead set perfect. What else was there? I'm just going through the notes because I've done it in all wrong order.
How'd you feel about Zero Squad?
Zero Squad, as in the, like...
Yeah. The Soul King's guard.
I really like the way they fight, and they're interesting new characters and stuff. I didn't like how the fights went though. Like they did the Ichigo thing where they're like, aha, you're all dead. And then they're like, aha, we actually are heaps not dead, lol. And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So that kind of annoyed me, but the characters themselves and the way they fight was really cool. And I like the paintbrush thing where he's just like, I've just gotten rid of the name of your arms. You can't move them anymore. It's like, what?
It's such a distinct... I think it's an Eastern culture thing more than anything. I've seen a recurring theme where they're like, names have power, names have power. You see it in multiple shows, that sort of thing. I thought that was so much fun.
I thought
that was such a good way to have him fight Yawak in a way that was not brute force on brute force. Because you know the Ichigo fight is going to be somewhat like that.
Yeah.
This was... It wasn't even necessarily like a full intelligent turnaround. It was just, we're going to do this in a way that feels like traditional Japanese. It's the calligraphy thing. It's using names as power. Like, I had so much fun watching that episode and reading it when it came out. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And I like being able to see the Zero Squad boss actually be a bit badass, because his whole time with Ichigo, he's pretty like...
Yeah.
He's super chill, and you're like, you're supposed to be the actual top. Like, we thought Yamamoto was the top, but you're the top. And you're just like, ha ha ha, big funny fat man. So it was cool to see him be like, I'm actually terrifying.
But that's the other thing that I find kind of weird about Bleach, is that there's always these higher levels of people that just seem to appear out of nowhere. Like, they never mentioned Zero Squad earlier in the show at all. Like,
the only thing I give them any credit for is they've mentioned the Soul King in such subtle and multiple ways throughout the show, until like Aizen directly said it as he was being imprisoned. That's the part I give them credit for, and I guess it's fine for him to have a guard squad of his own. But I do agree, like, the fact there's a Zero Squad, it's very shonen, but that doesn't make it good writing.
Yeah,
like
they're just lucky that they're fucking cool as hell.
They are cool as hell, and they had individual roles. I think that's their saving factor.
Yeah.
You've got the one who actually makes the swords. You got the cooling waters was a bit weird, and then the chick who makes clothes was a bit weird. But some of the roles felt like they were like, we need something for them. But like,
I think that it makes sense, because it's like, it's the concept of everything to prepare a warrior for battle. You know, it's the swords, it's the attire, or your armor, as it were. And then there was the woman who did the food or whatever. And so, you know,
the food.
Satiety, I guess, is important. And so I think that's what they kind of went with, is like, they're like, okay, well, we need X amount of characters to fill out the roles of what you would need to be the ultimate fighter. And so in that respect, I think it's pretty cool. And I quite like the squad. I think they're all interesting and cool characters. If anything, I just want to see more variety and surprise in fights. Yep. And that's pretty much my only critique. Fair. Is just give me some variety and some big meaty episodes.
There's some there's some change coming, and the big thing is I can't wait for us to do the final version of this little series we're doing with Bleach Review, because he said there will be, I think I said Oda earlier. Oda is like One Piece. It's not this. This is, fuck, I forget who this is. I've forgotten. It's not Oda. Pretty sure that's One Piece. Okay. But he has said this will be different, because he was rushed on the end of Bleach.
Yeah, you did mention this previously, I think.
The end is not necessarily not good. It just does give rushed vibes. So it will be nice to see it not done that way. I know it's coming in the next one. It's probably still going to feel similar to this one if they're going to do 4 parts. If they do 3, the next one will feel quick. If they do 4, the next one might feel a little slow. It'll be much the same as my prediction of a lot of side character stuff going on.
I'm fine with
which is
it.
not
Just
the
like,
worst.
stop giving me 3-minute episodes and start giving me some real goddamn content, boy.
Yeah, there's enough coming that I think that's totally possible. Ichigo really wasn't a standout in this. The whole Uryu thing, my biggest complaint about the anime actually is that some of the stuff that in the manga I genuinely thought had turned a corner and like, wow, maybe this is a thing. Like Uryu's behavior in the manga, and maybe it's just the way it's drawn in black and white and dramatic, does feel like a genuine betrayal. It does feel like he's on the bad guy's side, where watching the anime I'm like, feels like it's double agent-y. I don't know if that's just me watching it, but it doesn't feel like he's gone over completely.
Yeah.
And it's the same with some of the other darker stuff in the anime. It doesn't feel quite as dark to me, whereas when I read it, it all felt one after the one. It's like Zaraki has to kill Unohana. Kumamoto, Yamamoto died. Kumamoto, like, yep, he gets turned back into a human, but then he's dead. Or turned back into a dog. Like, it felt like pound after pound after pound. Heaps of people died. Like, we've got 2 captains down, the 2 previous Visor captains, Kenji and the musical one.
So,
like,
from the perspective of someone who hasn't read the manga, the entire time I was thinking, okay, so when did Uryu flip? Like, there's no, like...
Yeah.
Oh, how you going? You know, I reckon the Soul Society, dickheads, mate. I reckon you should come out, hang out with us Quincy's. There's like none of that. It's just straight up. He's just like, oh yes, I am evil now. And immediately my first thought was, he's a double agent. Like, because they don't give you any reason or any like story, even if it's an unconvincing story, they don't give you any like reason that he's just flipped, aside from the fact that I'm a Quincy, gotta be bad now. It just seems like the only thing he's doing is trying to deceive Yuabaha, or however the hell you're supposed to.
Yeah.
The spelling versus how you pronounce it kills me every time.
I went with Yuak, because that's how I read it, but then I think they've said it differently now in the dub, but I'd never heard it in English, so...
Yeah, so in English it's like Yuabaha, but... and if anyone could explain what the hell's going on with that name, I would give you at least 3 kisses.
Is there a B that comes in at the end that I haven't read? Because I'm pretty sure it's like YAWACH something.
It is... Oh god, I actually wrote it phonetically so I could pronounce it properly. I'll have to look into it later.
B, but they do pronounce it with a B in the thing. But who knows? Because it's probably German.
I would say so, but like it doesn't look German. It looks more Polish.
It doesn't look German. Yeah. We gotta know now.
Yeah, I've got to look this up. We'll cut this out. Okay, so it's pronounced Yuhabaha. No, I think it's Your Majesty.
There you go. Oh, really?
Yeah.
In what?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Oh god. Okay.
Oh no.
So, Yuabaha's name is a connection to Judaism, and it's a direct reference to Tetragrammaton, 4 letters in the Hebrew language that spell YHWH, which is Yahweh as in Jesus.
Well, he's the son. Yeah.
Like, I get what they're going for, but
it's so ridiculously niche and difficult. Like, it's not enough.
But it's not even German.
If anybody knows that,
everyone else gets German references, and it's like, nah.
And he gets what I think is fair to say close to the opposite of German.
Well, 80 years ago, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, he gets that. The name of the guys all named with German names and theming and clothing and stuff is the opposite of them. Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, that was interesting,
Sure.
but all in all, it wasn't bad. It was just a little bit samey, but it's going somewhere, and it looks like it's going good places, so...
Yeah. No, I'm good with it. It just, yeah, I agree. I had to bring it up because the Urdu stuff does not feel very true. Even when the other Quincy's talk to him, it feels like you're being already spoon-fed as an audience. Oh, don't worry, he's not really bad.
Yeah.
But then when he sees all his friends, it's like they fully believe he's bad, but they're like, oh, we'll convince him not to be bad. And you're like, what is this? I don't...
Yeah, like if you thought, like if I thought that you were true evil, I'd just kill you immediately. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to try and convince...
Like, especially if you rock up with a massive power upgrade and an extra sword.
Yeah. Clearly, you could not...
As well as access to half of his abilities anyway.
Yeah.
Like, Ichigo's learned he can use... I'm very interested to see what they do with this, but, like, he could theoretically and has accidentally regurgitated Quincy abilities before.
Yeah.
There's a mobile game, just as quick trivia before we finish this. The original author helped create a alternative future Ichigo where he's trained in Quincy abilities and oversaw the illustration of what that would look like, and it was pretty fucking cool. He's in like a hoodie with a big black bow, but he's got like a hollow hand, like he's fully hollowified hand with the claws and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks very cool. That's not what we'll be seeing in this, and it's not what happened in the manga, but or is it? Am I just misleading? He's already got 2 swords and did a big cross attack.
Yeah, and what would be cooler than putting 2 swords in a reishi bow and shooting them while they turn into bunkai?
I really wanted
at the same time
this whole show to get back to that reference when he fought the Menos. Do you remember when he had Uryu touching him? No, sorry, him touching Uryu made Uryu's bow just become ridiculous.
Vaguely. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was very early on, and he ended up having to like, they like taped Ichigo's sword to Uryu's head, and Ichigo held it, and it made Uryu's bow just like become huge because Ichigo can't control spirit energy enough to send it to Uryu, but if he's just in contact with him,
that's cool.
Somehow he's allowed to feed off it. It was very funny. I really wanted this all to lead back to that, where it's like Ichigo grabs Uryu and Uryu's bow just becomes fucking insane, and they put one of his swords in it or something. But that's not where it goes. That would have been way more.
I'd watch the piss out of that though.
That would have been a very good ending. No, it's not that. And on that disappointing, that's not how the ending happens.